The doors are open. See how the products around you are really made.
An iPhone arrives looking like one perfect object, created by one perfect factory. Its screen is untouched, its frame is precise, and every camera sits exactly in place. But beneath that simplicity is a global network of separate products. The major parts may begin in different factories, companies, and countries. There is no single magical Apple factory responsible for the entire device. The real factory is a network connected by specifications, logistics, and testing. So how do hundreds of parts become millions of nearly identical phones? The answer is extreme control and the repeated removal of variation. Today, we will follow that hidden system from materials to the finished box. Manufacturing begins long before the first production machine starts moving. Indeed, every detail matters. Every component must fit inside a body only a few millimeters thick. Adding one feature can force engineers to redesign several others. A faster processor changes heat, power consumption, and internal engineering requirements. Even changing the enclosure can influence the phone's wireless performance. This is why Apple cannot simply place standard parts inside an attractive case.
Subscribe, ring the bell, and stay with us for every new factory reveal.
This is why Apple cannot simply place standard parts inside an attractive case. Before mass production, prototypes are delivered. Failures reveal weaknesses before millions of customers discover them. Breaking one prototype is cheaper than recalling millions of finished devices. Only a manufacturable design can enter the machinery of mass production. At the center of every iPhone is an Apple-designed processor. That processor begins inside one of the world's most controlled manufacturing environments. Workers cover themselves because microscopic contamination can destroy a circuit. Wafers travel through repeated deposition, exposure, etching, and treatment stages. Each process adds structures far smaller than the human eye can inspect. At this scale, an invisible particle can destroy part of the processor. So how can a factory inspect billions of microscopic transistors?
This is where our metrology equipment comes in.
We use advanced optics to measure. It controls the process statistically, rather than examining every transistor individually. Electrical testing identifies which dies function correctly before the wafer is cut. The wafer is divided, and defective dies are removed from the production stream. The surviving chips are packaged so they can communicate with the entire phone. This critical component finishes an advanced factory journey before final assembly begins. The display is another complete product hidden inside the final product. Multiple functional layers must be formed, treated, and aligned with microscopic precision. The panel must create light, detect touch, and consume as little power as possible. A tiny defect can become obvious when the screen displays a uniform color. So what happens to a display containing one dead pixel? It can fail inspection before it ever reaches an iPhone assembly line. The surviving displays are tested across different operating conditions. The surface customers touch requires another specialized manufacturing process. Cover glass must be formed, strengthened, shaped, and inspected before assembly. Apple has expanded its partnership with Corning for iPhone cover glass manufacturing in Kentucky. That does not mean complete iPhones are assembled inside the glass factory. It means one critical component begins there before joining a global supply chain. The camera is a miniature optical instrument disguised as a small black circle. A lens positioned slightly off-center can reduce sharpness across the final image. A single trapped particle can appear inside photographs taken months later. Machines evaluate focus, alignment, color response, and stabilization movement. The module must focus rapidly while compensating for movement inside a tiny space. Why does an expensive camera still depend so heavily on computational photography? Because software helps overcome the physical limits of a small smartphone camera. The final photograph comes from optics, silicon, and software operating together. The battery stores substantial energy inside one of the phone's largest components. Its internal layers must be manufactured consistently and kept free from damaging contamination. The active materials are assembled into a sealed cell under strict process control. Electrical testing searches for abnormal behavior before a battery reaches the phone. Damage or contamination can turn a hidden imperfection into a serious failure. Recent iPhones also use growing quantities of carefully processed recycled materials. Recycled does not mean untreated material is placed directly into a new battery. Why not install the largest battery that can physically fit? Because more battery reduces space available for cameras, cooling, and structural components. A small dimensional error can cause major problems during final assembly. The enclosure begins as material that looks nothing like a finished phone. Computer-controlled tools cut complex features with extremely tight dimensional control. The frame must support components, manage impacts, and contribute to thermal control. Finishing creates the texture and appearance customers associate with a premium device. Color must remain consistent across production batches containing enormous numbers of frames. Why reject a frame that works but carries a slightly different shade? Because cosmetic consistency is part of the product, not an optional decoration. Optical systems identify imperfections that rushed customers might never consciously notice. Only frames meeting dimensional and visual standards continue into the phone. Inside the enclosure, the logic board connects nearly every major electronic system. The assembly begins with precisely measured solder paste placed across the board. Automated machines place miniature components with extraordinary speed and accuracy. Controlled heating melts the solder and creates thousands of electrical connections. Inspection searches for missing, rotated, or badly soldered components. Electrical testing finds failures that cannot be identified from appearance alone. No. Automation performs microscopic repetition, while people manage machines and exceptions. Sure. The real factory is neither completely manual nor completely automated. Now the separate products finally begin becoming one recognizable phone. The enclosure enters a controlled sequence where every operation depends on the previous one. Speakers, microphones, buttons, and specialized hardware occupy carefully designed locations. Every screw must enter the correct hole with the correct amount of force. A misplaced cable can be pinched when the phone is finally closed. The logic board joins the cameras, battery, sensors, and communication systems. Camera alignment must remain exact after every part is fastened around it. Adhesives and seals help protect the device after final closure. The battery enters under controlled handling because physical damage cannot be tolerated. Controlled pressure secures the screen without damaging the glass beneath it. The device finally looks complete, but appearance proves almost nothing. Final assembly begins another wave of inspection rather than ending production. Touch response and display behavior are checked across the screen. Buttons must respond correctly despite tiny differences in mechanical assembly. Camera systems verify focus, alignment, and image quality after installation. Microphones and speakers are measured rather than judged by casual listening. Power, charging, and communication functions must behave within defined limits. Wireless systems are tested because the enclosure itself can influence radio performance. How can millions of globally sourced phones behave almost identically? Factories do not assume perfection. They search deliberately for imperfect devices. A failed unit can be diagnosed, reworked, or removed before shipment. Modern manufacturing continues even after every physical component is installed. Software and configuration must now become part of the manufactured product. Individual hardware may require calibration information matched to that specific phone. Digital records must correspond correctly with the assembled hardware. A perfect-looking phone can still fail because its configuration is incorrect. Does the country printed on the box reveal where the entire phone was made? No. It usually identifies final assembly, not every component's origin. Critical parts can cross national borders before meeting inside one enclosure. China has historically played a major role in final iPhone assembly. Apple has also expanded significant portions of iPhone production and assembly in India. Calling the device entirely the product of one country oversimplifies the network. The box shows the final chapter, not the entire manufacturing story. The human reality behind the iPhone is also more complicated than factory myths suggest. Machines dominate tasks requiring microscopic speed, repetition, and accuracy. We ensure the components meet exact specifications.
Let's calibrate this system.
Quality control indicates we're good to proceed. Large supply chains also require enforceable labor, health, and safety standards. Apple reports assessments of supplier facilities, including some unannounced inspections. But written policies alone cannot prove that every workplace is perfect. A polished phone hides an enormous human organization behind its surface. After passing inspection, each approved device is prepared for packaging. The box must protect the device while minimizing unnecessary size and weight. Efficient packaging allows more phones to move in every shipment. Inventory systems connect each shipment to secure distribution records. Security matters because enormous value fits inside a small physical volume. The completed phones travel toward distribution centers, stores, and individual customers. The completed phones travel toward distribution centers, stores, and individual customers. Materials and microscopic components have now become one finished retail product. Apple appears to manufacture phones, but its deeper product is coordination. One missing component can interrupt an entire production system.
Who's next?
One failed connector can disable a device worth hundreds of dollars. One incorrect calibration can undermine an expensive camera system. One supply interruption can affect production across several countries. Consistency comes from forcing a vast network to meet the same targets. Its processor was created at a scale your eyes could never inspect. Its enclosure was manufactured to tolerances most customers will never notice. Its cameras were aligned before taking their first photograph for a customer. Its software became part of the factory process before shipment. Its global components finally met inside one carefully controlled enclosure. Building one iPhone is impressive, but producing millions consistently is the real achievement. No single factory, country, supplier, or robot creates that result alone. The clean unboxing hides semiconductor physics, materials science, logistics, and human labor. And now you know what happens behind what you buy.